Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gridiron 2022. Dr. Ron Poniewasz and Professor Larry Kelly. We are your Gridiron 2022 team, your award-winning Gridiron 2022 team. And Larry Kelly is a member of the Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George law firm, and as we mentioned, the Shenango varsity baseball coach, and we're happy to have him on board. And thank you, sir, for joining us.
Always my pleasure. Especially after a great weekend of football, high school football, two tremendous games by our Lawrence County teams, two great efforts. The victory's in the effort. Even though the Lancers didn't bring home the victory, man, they played that team tough and they had them on the ropes. And, it was a great effort and a great season by the Lancers.
Yep,
but we're here to talk about a Union Scotty sophomore who came up really, really big. Tell us about our athlete of the week.
Yep. Larry is referring to Maddox Thompson as our athlete of the week. Maddox Thompson, a 6 foot, 175-pound sophomore wide receiver, outside linebacker for the Scotties. He had 3 catches for 36 yards and 2 touchdowns on catches of 13 and 23 yards. And that came in an 18-16 win over Rochester in the Class 1A semifinal. So apparently he had 1 catch for 0 yards in that win. Larry, what a performance by Maddox Thompson, coming up big on two of his catches there.
Sophomore coming up big. And, I always say in big games, and I don't care what the sport is, normally if our best players are better than your best players, we're going to win. And if our best players are not better, we're not going to win. But every once in a while, you need an unsung hero. You need an underclassman. You need a guy who hasn't been, the focal point of the offense to step up and play big. And that's exactly what Maddox Thompson did on Friday night for the Scotties. Huge game, 2 big touchdowns, passes from Braylon Thomas, deserving of athlete of the week.
Yeah, and obviously the first one, his first touchdown put Union up 6-0, and the second one gave them a 12-8 lead. So Maddox Thompson, good hands, good possession receiver, good speed, and as a quarterback, quarterbacks love height. 6 foot, that's pretty good for a sophomore wide receiver. And he's only going to get taller, maybe up to 6'2", maybe by senior year. Who knows?
Yeah, and I'd be anxious to know how many touchdown passes he caught this past year. I'd be anxious to know that. But he came up big in this game, and when they needed him most, because I'm sure that Gene Matzuk, the head coach from Rochester, decided we're not going to let Braylon Thomas beat us. We're not going to let Mike Gunn beat us. Even though Braylon Thomas got him at the end, Maddox Thompson came up big. 2 big touchdown catches, 2 big touchdown receptions in the penultimate game. Sometimes the toughest game to win is the one that gets you to the ship, as they say. And the Union Scotties, for the first time since 1973, are going to play for the WPIAL Championship. What a great achievement for a great team.
Yeah, and that's wow, that's impressive. Team that was led by Chuck Lucidor, did a little bit of homework today, looking up that team and some information. So yeah, and naturally Union has had athletes throughout the years, great players, great athletes, great athleticism. They just haven't been able to put it all together for whatever reason, and it's been that long of a drought. But this year's team, as Larry said, is going to the WPIAL Championship, first time since '73, and Maddox Thompson had quite a hand in that on Friday night with those 2 touchdown receptions rather, 36 yards in total, and the touchdowns were on aerials of 13 and 23. Union now goes to 10-3 overall, 10-3. There were times where Union took 3 or 4 years to win 10 games, but this year, as we mentioned, they've put it all together, Larry, and they're going to the championship.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great win. I'm so happy for those guys. It's just a great win. And I'm sure we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but really great selection. Maddox Thompson coming up big for the Scotties, 2 TDs in up until now, the biggest game of the year.
That's right. Okay, Maddox Thompson is your athlete of the week from Union High School for those 2 touchdown passes, 2 touchdown receptions, rather. And we will be right back here with you on Gridiron to recap those semifinals, so don't go anywhere.
There's one thing I learned growing up around here. People should look out for each other, be friends and neighbors that you can count on. So it bothers me when people who are hurt in automobile accidents get bullied by the insurance company. I don't let bullies run over my clients. I do what I was taught growing up. Step up, stand up, and speak up for those who can't. I'm Larry Kelly, and I'm a Newcastle guy.
We're back with you here on Gridiron, everybody. And as Larry told you in the previous segment of Athlete of the Week, we had 2 dandies last week in the semifinals. One team got through to the championship, that being Union, coming up with an 18-16 win over Rochester. Neshannock dropped a 32-17 decision to Steel Valley. And first off, Larry, let's talk about Neshannock. They went to the half, trailing, I believe it was 13-0. It just really didn't have a whole lot going in the first half. And then Johnny Huff had got hurt early in the game, a little bit of an ankle tweak, and kind of affected his play. But coming out of halftime, they got the ball to start the second half. And I tell you what, as somebody that loves football like I do, a fan, I prefer that my team gets the ball. Whoever I'm rooting for, if I have a rooting interest, I want my team getting the ball coming out of halftime. Because if you're losing, it gives you a chance to get it a little closer. If you're winning, it gives you a chance to extend the lead. I do not care about getting the ball first and all that stuff, but I prefer it out of halftime, and Neshannock proved why. Johnny Huff, first play from scrimmage, 50 yards to the end zone for a touchdown. That was big for the Lancers, gave them huge momentum.
Absolutely. I mean, but it was a big play by a big game player. Johnny Huff's been big for the Lancers all year. I don't know that anybody's had a better season than him in the quarterback position. I know Braylon Thomas has been tremendous also, but this young man has done it all for the Lancers, and he did it again, coming out of the half, down 13-0, 50 yard. First play of the half, right? First play of the half, if I'm not mistaken. He runs 50 yards for a touchdown, immediately gets those guys back into the game. Immediately. Big play, huge play. Turns the momentum around.
Yeah, and they went from down 13-0 to a 17-13 lead, I think, with as we were talking off air, right around the 8-minute mark of the fourth quarter, and then things just went sideways where Steel Valley got an 80-yard touchdown run, and things got compounded from there. The Ironmen were able to rally and regroup and get that 32-17 win. It was a lot closer than the final score would indicate.
Oh, no.
A lot of times people.
No question about it. I mean, listen, it was a 17-13 game. And again, a lot of it had to do with Johnny Huff. He runs one in from 50, and then he throws a touchdown pass, 19-yard pass out to Ronnie DeMace with 8 minutes to go in the game. They take their first lead at 17-13. The momentum is all in their favor. And then all of a sudden, Steel Valley, it's a championship ball club, Ronnie. They have a lot of championship pedigree, and that's what championship teams do. The very first play after the touchdown, young man breaks a couple tackles, runs 80 yards to put him ahead. But as Coach Mangino said, it was a 2-point game at the time. Neshannock gets the ball, 3 and out, they punt. Steel Valley scores again, but they missed the extra point. So it's 8-point difference. It's a 1-possession game, and Neshannock has come back all year. I mean, they are tough kids, mentally tough, physically tough, well coached, and just unfortunate they turned it over at the end of the game. And, you know, 3 touchdowns in the last 8 minutes of the game. And that was a dogfight, and the Shannick had them on the ropes. They did. Great effort. This team lost 2 games all year. They lost to the number 1 seed, Still Valley, and the number 2 seed, Beaver Falls. So, you know, listen, that was a football team that had a tremendous season. Kudos go out to their coaching staff. And as I said, Coach Mazzoka and a bunch of his assistants, most of whom are from Newcastle. I forgot to mention Joey Flora on that staff last week. You made it clear to me I forgot to mention Coach Bonji. But, you know, those guys did a tremendous job. What a tremendous season. You don't have to win the championship to have a tremendous season. You don't. That's icing on the cake. You know, in 10 years from now, the kids won't remember the last game against Still Valley, but they'll remember the journey that got them there. And this was a tremendous, tremendous season for a tremendous football team. And my hat goes off to them.
You said you don't have to win a championship to have a tremendous season. It's been a few days now since the season ended. How long does it take the players and the staff to realize just, you know, how special of a season they had, what all they did, you know, before they really appreciate it? Because I'm sure it affects them that they didn't get the win, you know, and then another team is preparing for a title. How soon do you actually appreciate and realize, you know, just how great of a run you had?
It takes a while. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, I lost the state championship in baseball. It took me a year to watch the film of it, you know, so it doesn't happen overnight. But this time next year, those guys will be talking about the journey and the different things that happen, and the practices and the games and the coaches. And, you know, it is something, a season like this, that will bond them together forever. Those are tough guys. Had a great season. And again, they lost to the number 1 seed, Still Valley, and the number 2 seed. And the Shannick was the real deal this year. Real deal. Tremendous season.
Yeah, absolutely incredible season by the Lancers. They have absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. They played their guts out, start to finish in that game, left it all on the field. I know it's probably cliche to say that, but I watched a great part of that game on stream, and you could see it. They gave it their all for 4 quarters, start to finish, and they played their best game. They gave it their best effort, and kudos to Neshannock for a fantastic 2022.
Had them on the road.
Larry,
season 11-2.
Yeah. Larry, let's talk about Union. For many years, the Scotties have been that kind of little engine that could, you know, they're a small school with not a whole lot of kids that going out for the program, but yet they're always loaded with athleticism, especially at key positions, skill positions too. And now they've put it all together. It's been 49 years of brewing that winning mix, and here it is, and we're watching it. This is great to be able to see this.
You know, let me read something. Mike Gunn, his son plays on the team. I've known Mike and his brother Joe forever and ever. He sent me we've been texting back and forth, and he sent me a text just the other day after the game. And here's what he said. And I think it encapsulates Union and what they've been through as a football program. And this is what Mike said. This is his text. He said, "This game is more than football. It's about kids that have never been given a chance. Kids that have always been told they're too small, not tough enough, don't know how to win. This game is about every Scotty who ever put on a uniform, every Scotty whose parents had to work 2 jobs so that they'd have better football equipment, every Scotty that has to go against kids every week that are better, more athletic, and bigger, yet our players keep coming back every week, every Scotty that plays hurt and never comes off the field." Man, that encapsulates it. Because like you said, this team for years and years have been playing with 18 players, 16 players, dressed. It's a great accomplishment. not only for the team and the coaches and the players, but the entire community. And as Mike said, any player that's ever worn a Union uniform, listen, that means something to me, man. I told him, I said, Mike, I got the chills when I read that because it's so true. It's just so true.
Mm-hmm. I've seen quite a bit of their games this year, probably most of their home games, if not all of their home games. And it just seemed like they got better and better each week. That game against Canton, when it was a makeup game, or not a makeup game, a scheduled on the fly type of game because of Mohawk situation. And then you start hearing about how good Canton is and the 3-time state semifinalist and this and that. And you're thinking, well, I guess we're going to find out how good Union is. And then when the game ended, Union was right there, and you kind of had this sense of, okay, it's the first game. So how good is Canton? Maybe they lost a lot of kids to graduation. How good is Union? Let's let the season play out and make our decision. Well, Canton's still playing in District 4, I believe it is. Union's still playing in District 7, and we're seeing what Union has: the athleticism, the great players, the line play on both sides of the field. There's only one aspect of Union, Larry, that kind of, I don't want to say leaves a lot to be desired, but they struggle in, that's the kicking game. They do not go for an extra point. They go for 2 all the time because they do not have a place kicker. And I remember that Canton game. After the game, I was talking to Coach Needballa. I think they took a safety because they were pinned in way down, and they didn't want to punt and give up great field position and have a touchdown scored. And I asked him about that, and he said, well, we don't exactly have Ray Guy back there punting, so that's probably, if they have a deficiency, that's it. But it's made up for with the 2-point conversions.
Yeah, well, let me remind you of something. Aliquippa hasn't had a kicker for 10 years, and I think they're playing in their 10th consecutive WPIAL championship game. So, if you have a kicker in the high school level, you're pretty fortunate. Normally, to have a really good kicker, you got to have a soccer team, and they grab one of the soccer players. But yeah, that might be the only thing that they're deficient at, because this team, they come to play, buddy, and they have some big time players, and it probably starts and ends with Braylon Thomas. I saw the touchdown. The one thing you can't do, you can't let him beat you, and Rochester did, and he went back on a quarterback draw. I don't know if it was a designed play or it was just a play where he was looking downfield, with the intention of throwing it. And when the play broke down, he just took off. And Braylon Thomas in the open field, there was one guy that had a chance. He missed the tackle, and the show was over. It was Braylon Thomas taking it to the house. He's a great player, and that's what great players do. They're just, when the moment gets big, they get better. And that's who this young man is. He's special.
I think Aliquippa has been going for 2 for a lot longer than 10 years, Larry.
Well,
if
my
we're going to be
point
honest.
is, it doesn't bother them, and I don't think it's going to bother Union next week, and but what a great game. Again, Rochester's tough, well coached. It's just, Gene Matsuk has been a football coach for 40 years. Rochester has championship pedigree, and to beat them in this game is something special. And as I said, sometimes the toughest game to win is the one that sends you to the ship. You want to get there. You want to play at Acrisure Stadium, and it's an opportunity of a lifetime. And Union's there, and they deserve to be there.
Yeah, and we will talk more about them in the next segment, as they have Bishop Canevin in the championship game on Friday morning. Larry, before we close up our segment here, I'd like to read an email. I'm not going to read it verbatim, start to finish. I'll pick it up in pieces, verbatim in pieces. We received this on November 16th, and it involves the Laurel Union quarterfinal game. It has nothing to do with where the game was played. So let's, get that out of the way first. So there's a lineman on the chain gang Don, and I'm hoping his last name is Bowden. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. He was a lineman for about 60 years, on the chain gang. And that night, as the email says, he was told by a referee last night to get the bleep off the field. In all caps, yelled at, "You are too old." And the person that sent in the email said, according to a witness, Mr. Bowden was in tears on the field. Now, Larry, just that's just terrible. I hate hearing that. And let me paint it from my perspective. That is a referee using his mouth to be ignorant toward a lineman, a chain gang person. Age aside, doesn't matter if the lineman is 21 or 101. We always hear at sporting events, Larry, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I know as a coach you probably have more important things to worry about than the announcements that are made by the PA announcer, but there's an announcement that's made prior to all sporting events that's basically a sportsmanship message, and it's basically intended for fans so they don't berate the officials, because God forbid we're running short on officials. But here's Mr. Referee going the other side and giving a gentleman a hard time, and apparently he was maybe a couple steps on the field or something, and and he verbally abused him like that. You know what? That's terrible. There's no room for that. At the end of that message, that sportsmanship, it says sportsmanship. The only missing thing is you. Hey, pal, you got a lot to learn. Sportsmanship more than skip the beat on you, and he probably should lose his stripes over something like that. I don't know if that'll happen. I don't care how good of a referee he is. That's terrible that society has come to that. And I just hate hearing that he would say that to Mr. Bowden.
Yeah, if indeed that's true, that's unacceptable behavior. The people that work, the sidelines are volunteers, and many of them do it for the love of the game. Many of them have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years. To show such disrespect is unacceptable behavior, and that incident should be reported, and the WPIAL should take steps to do something about it. Whether they take his card away is one thing, but he certainly should be probably reprimanded, because that's unacceptable behavior from an official. Unacceptable.
Now, and take all these into consideration, as you mentioned. Volunteer, doing it for the love of the game, as you mentioned. Also take into consideration that was the night that it rained like mad. And that gentleman's out in there, in the elements, as any other chain gang person was, as any other official was, as any other fan was. But then, he's helping. He's kind of what you say, giving back to the community, giving back to those student athletes, because without the chain gang, without the officials, is the game getting played? Well, it's going to get played, but you have to have those. Those are essential pieces to a game. And that gentleman was out there helping and doing the best he could. If he's a step or two off on the field, okay, granted, you're probably annoyed by the terrible conditions. Say, sir, could you please take another step or two back? Thank you. Do you have to really be ignorant about it? I mean, society today is just awful.
No, you don't. It's unacceptable behavior, period. Unacceptable. And, we as coaches are held to a certain standard, but the officials should be held to the same standard. If I were to address an official, whether it be in a baseball game or a basketball game, I would be written up, either given a technical foul or kicked out of the game, or both. And there would be WPIAL, and I would have to answer for it. thank God that's never happened. I've never had a technical foul, and I've been coaching basketball for 20 years, and I've never been thrown out of a baseball game. I have a fear, my theory is if the coach loses his composure or her composure, then the team will lose theirs. So it's my responsibility to maintain my composure so my team doesn't lose theirs. And so therefore, same thing should happen here. There should be a report. He should be asked and called upon to answer for it. And if indeed it's found to be true, there should be some type of repercussions, whether it's, a suspension from any further playoff games, but that's unacceptable behavior to an older gentleman who's a volunteer standing out there in the rain and maybe getting paid $30 or something. Sometimes they pay the chain gang a nominal amount to work the game, but they certainly don't do it for the money. They do it for the love of the game.
Yeah. Being a lineman for 60 years, as it said in the email. And you know what, Mr. Referee, practice what you preach. If you want respect from fans, how about you give a little bit of respect to the individuals that are working the sideline? Respect
That
works
email
both
should
ways.
not have been sent to you, Ronnie. It should have been sent to the WPIAL. That's where it should have been sent. And maybe it
might
was.
have been.
And maybe it was.
Yeah,
And
maybe
maybe you should send it there. Yeah. We know who the president of the WPIAL is, right? I mean, we send it. Let them address it, because I think it's something that certainly needs to be addressed.
Yeah, they were passing it along to us, and we were happy to read it. Certainly not happy from the standpoint of what it says about society, that's for sure. All right, Larry. Hey, we got the grand finale, and that's a championship preview. Don't go away, everybody, as we have the WPIAL Class 1A championship preview, and we'll do that next right here on Gridiron.
Growing up here was great. As a kid, you always felt safe and secure. Just about the only thing I didn't like growing up were bullies, especially when they picked on somebody smaller. That's why, as an attorney, I decided early on that I was going to fight for those people who couldn't fight for themselves. I could have gone to Pittsburgh and worked for the insurance companies, but to me, that would have been like siding with the bullies. And that's just not who I am. I'm Larry Kelly, and this is where I'm from.
Hey, we're back with you here, everybody, on Gridiron to talk about the championship preview. And it is the Union Scotties, the 10th seed, at 10-3 overall against the number 1 seeded Bishop Canevin Crusaders. Crusaders come in at 12-1. This is the WPIAL Class 1A championship game. It is set for 11 a.m. Friday at Acrisure Stadium. You guessed it. Where Steely McBeam and the rest of the Pittsburgh Steelers play. That'll be Friday morning, Larry. And boy, I tell you what, for those of us that love to gamble, if you would have put a prop up at the beginning of the season, and I always kind of jokingly will mention this, what would the number have been for Union as the last Lawrence County team remaining playing football? What would you put that on that number for an odd? I don't know if too many people would have thought that outside of that locker room, certainly, but it had to be pretty high.
That's a great question. Yeah, you'd have got pretty big odds had you bet the Scotties at the beginning of the year. Absolutely. They hadn't been there since 1973. So, but they're there now, and they deserve to be there, and they played Bishop Canevin. And once again, you have a public school with an enrollment. They graduate about 50 kids at Union. Their players come from a radius of, I'd say, maybe 5 miles. And you're playing Bishop Canevin. I'd be anxious to know how many school districts and not that they can't win. Not that they can't win, because they can. As I told you, when we played in the WPIAL championship game, we played Seton LaSalle. They were a Pittsburgh AAU team. They had 5 Division I baseball players on that team. And that's what Union's going to be looking at. They're going to be playing a Pittsburgh all-star team. But these Scotties, there's something special about them, Ronnie. There's something special. And when you got a guy like Braylon Thomas, who is the straw that stirs the drink, when he's your leader and when he's capable of making plays just like he did against Rochester, man, you always got a shot. You do. You have a chance. And, you know, I'll be pulling for the Scotties big time on Friday morning.
Yeah, you and me both, my friend. You and me both. Excuse me, Larry. I was talking to, I called a good friend of mine, Joe Sager, today, who used to work here at the News and helps us out with correspondence and stories and stuff like that. And we were talking. I said, Joe, the coach for Bishop Canevin, Richard Johnson, he's in his third year. He says, boy, they've really come a long way from the year before he got there. I think they were 1-9, and Union beat them that year, and they beat them handily. I think it was 56-22. And I says, they really got better, much better, really quick. 1-9 that year to maybe the championship last year. They won the WPIAL title last year, and I think the previous year before that they had a winning record or very competitive. And he says, "Oh yeah, they had a bunch of kids, go into their school, I think transfers or whatever it was." And he says that's so yeah, that's gonna help, for sure. But they really did get, what a turnaround there for Bishop Canevin, and so they've
had good recruiting classes, is what they've had. It would be like, okay, we'll play Bishop Canevin, and we're going to get an all-star team from Lawrence County. We're going to get Johnny Huff from the Shannock, and we're going to get Landon Smith from Laurel, and we're going to pick up a few of those guys, and then let's go play them, and let's make the playing field a little bit even and see how it works. But I'm not making excuses. I don't care. Union has the guns that can get this done. They got Braylon Thomas. This kid is special, and when you have somebody special, one guy can make a difference. And when I won the WPIAL championship game, I had Shane Cato. They were chanting his name from the stands, that the kid was special. He was just special. And he refused to allow anything to interfere with his laser focus. Bishop Canevin, they got Braylon Thomas. The cat is special. And that may be enough.
Yeah, for sure. He is special, as you said. Thomas is a 6'2", 180-pound quarterback, defensive back, and he is through the air. 67 of 141 for 1,089 yards, 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Threw 2 touchdowns last week, no interceptions. And on the year, he's rolled up 1,409 rushing yards on 207 carries with 18 touchdowns. So he's accounted for almost 2,500 yards by himself and 28 touchdowns. So he's a big piece of the puzzle, but yet there are other pieces of the puzzle as well.
No, there are. Mike Gunn, we've talked about him many times. Maddox Thompson, the kid that was the athlete of the week. Listen, you need more than one guy. It's more than just one guy. You need everybody to stand tall. And your big guns have to be big guns. The big guns in Union are going to have to be better than the big guns at Canevin. But they got some special players. They do. And when you got special things can happen. And it just might happen on Friday morning. It could happen. They're going to be ready. The Scotties are going to be ready, man. They're going to be ready. One game, anything can happen. A few turnovers, a couple breakaways, anything can happen. Union's going to have to do a good job of controlling the line of scrimmage. Again, they got outrushed against Rochester, 175 to 121. And normally the team that wins the rushing battle wins the game because they control the line of scrimmage. In the Neshannock game, Still Valley ran the ball for 286 yards, whereas Neshannock only ran it for 138. You have to be able to control the line of scrimmage. So, Union's going to have to do a little better job, at the line of scrimmage, and, hope for some big plays, because that's who they are. That's who they've been all year. They're a big play team. How many touchdowns has Braylon Thomas had that have been 30, 40-yard runs? How many? Several throughout the course of the year. So, he gets into the secondary, he gets past the containment, he can take it to the house, and he's probably going to need one or two of those, in the game against Canevin to win the game, to win the championship. But, I would never bet against Union. Not now, not the way they've been playing. They're playing their best football right now. They've beaten some good teams. They absolutely, and they've been an underdog in just about every one of those games. Probably the Rochester game was the first game they may have been a favorite based on the seedings. But the first two playoff games, clear underdogs. Against Laurel, clearly an underdog. But yet, they find a way to win.
Yeah. Only 3 losses, and they're no slouches. Canton still going in District 4. Laurel, which was the conference champ. Southside Beaver lost to Bishop Canevin last week. Those are your 3 losses. And that Southside Beaver game, that was your bad loss. Even though in terms of opponent, it's not a bad loss. I think they lost 35-8. So they weren't competitive in that game, but very competitive against Canton. And certainly the 28-22 loss in overtime in the regular season to Laurel. So, ultra competitive in their 2 of the 3 losses, Larry. Let's talk about Mike Gunn, as we mentioned. Mike Gunn, junior quarterback, defensive back. He plays running back mainly, just a jack of all trades type of young man. He's 413 yards rushing on 75 attempts, 11 touchdowns. He's got 16 catches for 210 yards. And there's other kids too, Caden Fisher, Dane Jonke, Matt and Mark Stanley, Jamel Mitchell. They don't have a ton of kids, but they got a ton of talent. And that could win the day on Friday morning.
Yeah, they're going to have to come to play. Bishop Canevin's good. They beat Southside 49-21. They put up a lot of points. So, Union's going to have to score points. They're going to have to score points, hopefully create some turnovers, have some big plays from their big-time players. And if they do that, they can win the game. But again, they're playing a Pittsburgh AAU team. It's just no boundaries. They get their players from wherever they want them. And when you have a turnaround as quickly as Bishop Canevin has had him, my guess is they've had some players come into the school district who are not football players. I don't know that for a fact. I really don't. But normally that's the case.
All right. Some of the big players for Bishop Canevin. You got Cole Olszewski, 85 of 128 through the air, 1,373 yards, 16 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. Xavier Nelson, who I've been told is a very dynamic player, very athletic. He's a speedster, and he also returns kicks. So the Scotties are going to want to make sure that they do not let him get loose, or it could be a long morning, afternoon for them. 39 catches, 1,230 yards. And think about that, 39 catches, well over 1,000 yards, 1,230. And he's got 22 total touchdowns. Marquise Carter, 182 carries for 1,545 yards and 11 touchdowns. And they split quarterback duties between Cole Olszewski and Jason Cross. Cross is a junior, and Larry, he's getting Division I looks from Akron and Kent State. I did not write his numbers down right offhand, but he's the only player on their team that I was told that is getting Division I looks, and he hasn't committed yet because he's just a junior. So I tell you what, you're going to have to win all 3 phases of this game. And but Union's got a great return team also. Teams don't want to kick the ball to them. It's almost like Newcastle. you put a kid back for Newcastle. They don't want to kick the ball to Newcastle because they have speed and athleticism and good blocking. And that's what Union has too. They're very buttoned up on all three phases.
Well, again, they'll have to play their best game,
Mm-hmm.
And, but I like guys, and I tell my guys this all the time, these schools that get players from everywhere, these kids really don't know each other like the kids from Union know each other. When we were getting ready to play Seton LaSalle, I said, I want to play with guys who have been playing together since they were 6 years old, who drank water out of the garden hose in the backyard of their buddy, who walked to school together, who, there's a certain togetherness that comes with that. There's a certain brotherhood that comes with that, rather than a kid coming from this school district or that school district, and you meet each other when you're a sophomore or junior in high school. So there's something to be said about that, Ronnie. There's something to be said. Drinking that water out of the garden hose with your brothers from the time you were 6 years old, my man. There's something that brings you together when you're doing those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing I asked Coach Niedball tonight as I interviewed him tonight, Monday, for the preview, Larry, you'll probably remember this. I certainly did. Basketball, in terms of basketball, last year, Bishop Canevin beat Union for the basketball championship. I believe I don't have the scores written down. I think 58-45 last year. The year before that, Canevin beat Union in the semifinals. And the year before that, Canevin beat Union in the quarterfinals, 40-39, I believe it was. 3 straight years, Canevin has eliminated Union's basketball team from the WPIAL playoffs. Got Matt Stanley, you got Mark Stanley, got Caden Fisher, I believe, plays basketball. I think Dane Junkie plays basketball. I don't know all of the players offhand. There's more than just those kids. I'm sure they know that. I'm sure that's right on the tip of their tongue, Canevin and what they did in basketball. That just adds fuel to the fire for those kids.
Look, one game, one chance. You got some special players at Union. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. And again, in a football game, the weather could play a factor. Field conditions can play a factor. Turnovers can play a factor. There's a lot of things that can play a factor. And I'm guessing Bishop Canevin probably hasn't been in too many close games or behind in many games. You jump on them early. Young men start to panic. Things can change. So it will be important for Union to get a fast start in this game. I can tell you that. It will be important.
Absolutely. Are you expecting fireworks, a lot of scoring? Or are you expecting a 8-6 type of game?
No. Bishop Canevin puts up too many points. They get too many skill players. If Union's going to win, it's going to be a shootout. Union's got to put up 20, 30 points to win this game. That's my guess.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Larry, that you'd like to say on the championship preview?
I want to commend Neshannock on a great season. 11-2. What a great year they had. And same can be said for the Union Scotties, man. I'll be pulling for the Scotties. When a public school plays one of these private schools, man, nothing makes me happier than to see a public school win in that situation. So I'll be pulling for the Scotties on Friday morning.
As will I. Certainly rooting for those kids to bring home a championship. And I was looking at the state bracket, the PIAA bracket, and the winner will already be in the state semifinals, and whoever wins that game will play a week from Friday on opening night of basketball. That'll be the 2nd of December, and they will play Reynolds, or I want to say it's Port Allegheny is who Reynolds will be playing. Winner of that game will be heading out east for the state championship game. I mean, that's how far along whoever wins this game will be. You win one game after that, you're playing for chocolate and gold.
That's because the WPIAL, you got to go through 3 or 4 rounds to get to the final. So, and that's what Union's done. They've won 3 games so far. They got to win 1 more, right, to get to the final. So, yeah, that's the way it works in football. You got to win 1 more, then you're automatically in the Western Final if you win the WPIAL championship.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks a lot for joining us, buddy. We appreciate it, and best of luck to Union's coaching staff and the student athletes and the community, all the supporters out there. The Scotties bring home a championship. We will be back here next week, everybody, hopefully to talk about that Western Final, as Larry Kelly alluded to just a couple of moments ago. And on the agenda for us this week here at the Newcastle News, things that we are working on, in addition to the Maddox Thompson Athlete of the Week, we will have game preview. We will also have a feature where we are contacting a bunch of former Scotties football players through the years, just to get their thoughts on what it's been like to play for the program, and just trying to get to that level that this team has got to. And that's going to be later in the week. So we're looking forward to that. It should be very well done, and very well received, we expect.
I look forward to reading that. I'm sure you guys will do a great job with that. I'm looking forward to reading that story.
Yeah, it should be well done. We expect it to be well received, and we expect a great game out of the Scotties for sure. So best of luck to the Scotties. Thanks a lot, Larry Kelly, for joining us here this week. We look forward to seeing you back here next week, my friend.
Okay, my brother. And then after that, we got some hoops to talk about.
Yeah, we do. We sure do. All right, but we got business to take care of first. We got a little thing about a district title, and then who knows? This could all be fun. Opening night of basketball, we could have a state semifinal. You never know, my friend. You never know.
All right, Ronnie. Sounds good. Thanks for having me. Good luck, Scotties. Bring it home, man. I want you to bring this home. I do.